Colonel Potter, sir, my last wish is to be buried in my mother's wedding gown.
I've seen these Dodgers for 40 years, all the tricks. Dismissed!
Imagine American television without MASH. It's tough, right? That's because the show wasn't just popular. It reshaped what a sitcom could be. Premiering in 1972, during the final years of the Vietnam War, MASH was set in the Korean War and blended humor with heartbreak.
She said I had an unhappy love affair. So I said, was it one of my doctors? She said, no, it was your priest.
It's hard to picture the landscape of American television without MASH, a show that didn't just attract viewers, but actually changed what a sitcom was capable of being. When it premiered in 1972, with the Vietnam War still fresh in the national psyche, the series was nominally set during the Korean conflict. Yet it managed to weave together comedy and genuine sorrow in a way audiences hadn't quite seen before, using its eccentric ensemble to examine both the absurdity of armed conflict and the toughness of the human spirit. And it didn't take long for the show to win over a devoted following. But away from the cameras, the production was far from static, and as the storytelling pushed further into social critique and richer character development, friction sometimes built up among the people making it, which eventually led several fan-favorite performers to walk away, some for reasons that were deeply personal, others tied to professional ambition or behind-the-scenes disagreements, and the full story behind those departures is more layered than most people realize. Before getting into who left and why, it's worth tracing the show's origin, because like so many great television properties, MASH didn't start on TV at all. It began as a 1968 novel by Dr. Richard Hooker, a pseudonym for H. Richard Hornberger, a surgeon who had actually served in a mobile army surgical hospital during the Korean War, and his book, a semi-fictional retelling of that experience, blended dark humor with unvarnished honesty about wartime suffering, which helped it become a bestseller and eventually caught Hollywood's eye. 2 years later, filmmaker Robert Altman turned the novel into a biting satirical film starring Donald Sutherland as Hawkeye Pierce and Elliot Gould as Trapper John, and the movie resonated strongly with a country still gripped by Vietnam, going on to earn major acclaim, including top honors at Cannes and an Oscar for its screenplay. The real turning point, though, came 2 years after that when CBS reimagined the concept as a weekly television series under the guidance of Larry Gelbart and Gene Reynolds. The TV adaptation debuted on September 17, 1972, retaining the wartime backdrop and irreverent tone, but shifting toward a more serialized, character-focused approach that allowed for far deeper emotional payoff, with Alan Alda taking on the role of Hawkeye Pierce and quickly becoming the show's emotional center. Ratings were shaky at first, so shaky the series nearly got canceled, but CBS gambled on moving it to Saturday nights, and that single decision sent both viewership and cultural relevance soaring. The show broke convention in numerous ways. It was groundbreaking for incorporating real combat footage, and it became one of the first American comedies to swap out a laugh track for the sound of helicopter blades. Alda, meanwhile, evolved beyond just acting, stepping into writing and directing duties, and pushing the series toward greater realism and emotional nuance. But as MASH grew more sophisticated, not every cast member was thrilled with the direction it was heading, with some feeling their characters were being reduced to caricatures or losing relevance, while others were wrestling with private struggles or simply itching to try something new. And across its 11 seasons, the show saw a steady stream of cast turnover, even as it stayed true to its core mission of portraying the human cost of war through humor, wit, and unbreakable camaraderie. The first big departure was so jarring that the writers responded by killing the character off entirely, a move that stunned viewers across the country. If you ask longtime fans which moment hit hardest, many will point to the closing scene of the Season 3 finale, Abyssinia, Henry, when one quiet line from radar changed everything. Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blake's plane had gone down over the Sea of Japan, with no survivors. That scene was historic not just for its shock value, but because it represented the first major exit from the core cast, that of actor McLean Stevenson. McLean had been there from day one, playing the bumbling but warm-hearted commanding officer, Colonel Henry Blake, a character whose decency provided a perfect counterbalance to the chaos of war. While Hawkeye and Trapper brought mischief and rebellion, Blake brought heart, even if he was often flustered and out of his depth. His early performances won him broad acclaim and a Golden Globe, and audiences adored him, but behind the scenes things were less settled. As Alda's involvement in writing and directing grew, his character increasingly became the emotional centerpiece of the show, and McLean reportedly began to feel pushed to the margins, so much so that he told People magazine in 1975 that he wanted to be the lead, not a secondary player. This wasn't simply vanity. McLean had genuine ambitions to headline his own series and worried about being typecast in a supporting role forever, so at the close of Season 3, he informed producers he wouldn't be returning. Rather than writing him off gently, as was typical for departing sitcom characters, Gelbart and Reynolds saw a chance to underscore the show's wartime stakes by killing Blake off entirely, reminding audiences that not everyone makes it home from a war. The resulting episode built toward this with a seemingly happy send-off. Celebrations, embraces, tears of joy, before delivering its gut punch in the final scene. Radar walking into the operating room, visibly shaken, to deliver the news of Blake's death, met with stunned silence rather than music or sound effects, just the steady beep of medical equipment. It was one of the earliest instances of a beloved sitcom character being killed off without warning, and much of the cast's shock was genuine, since only Gary Burghoff, who played Radar, had been told in advance so he could prepare for the scene. CBS was flooded with mail afterward, some praising the bold storytelling, others furious that a cherished character had been taken from them so suddenly. But Gelbart stood by the choice, explaining that the point was to show that not everybody gets to go home. As for McLean, life after MASH didn't go quite as he'd hoped. He landed a deal with NBC and starred in his own sitcom, but it was canceled after a single season. And a follow-up attempt, Hello, Larry, fared even worse, becoming something of a punchline in entertainment circles. By 1983, in an interview with the Los Angeles Times, he admitted he had taken himself out of the game, recognizing that what he'd had on MASH, the cast, the writing, the cultural impact, was a once-in-a-career situation he wouldn't replicate. Co-stars like Alda and Loretta Swit expressed sympathy for his decision even while understanding his desire to branch out. And when he passed away in 1996 at age 68, tributes poured in, with Alda calling him a wonderful actor and a good man, and Burghoff describing him as a warm presence who brought joy to everyone around him. In a strange twist, the very role McLean walked away from ended up becoming the most memorable of his career. If McLean's exit was dramatic and very public, Wayne Rogers' departure was the opposite, quiet, abrupt, and shrouded in behind-the-scenes tension. One week he was there as Trapper John McIntyre, and the next he was simply gone, with no goodbye episode and no on-screen explanation. Wayne had originally signed on expecting a genuine ensemble show with balanced screen time, but as the series matured, the spotlight increasingly gravitated toward Alda's Hawkeye, who had become both the moral compass and creative driving force of the show. Wayne didn't initially resent Alda's rise. The two were said to get along well off-camera, but he gradually felt his character stagnating while Hawkeye kept evolving. As Wayne later put it, Trapper had little left to do beyond reacting to whatever Hawkeye said or did. Unlike McLean, Wayne didn't make a public announcement. He simply chose not to renew his contract once Season 3 wrapped, and the production team reportedly didn't even realize he was gone until shortly before Season 4 began filming. Adding to the strangeness, Wayne had never actually signed a formal contract. His arrangement had been a handshake deal the entire time, meaning that when producers considered legal action for breach of contract, they discovered they had no real grounds to do so, since technically nothing had been broken. His sudden absence forced the writers to scramble, hastily explaining in the Season 4 premiere that Trapper had been discharged, while Hawkeye happened to be on leave, and fans reacted with frustration, having just processed Henry Blake's death, only to lose another central character with zero closure or farewell. Stepping into the resulting gap was Mike Farrell as B.J. Honeycutt, a more grounded and introspective replacement for the rebellious Trapper, and that shift nudged the show's tone away from buddy comedy energy toward something more reflective. And many would argue the series actually deepened as a result, even though plenty of viewers still hold a soft spot for those earlier seasons. As for Wayne himself, he didn't vanish from public life. He continued acting in various projects, but eventually pivoted toward an entirely different career as a financial investor. Having studied history at Princeton and going on to build real expertise on Wall Street, later appearing regularly on Fox News' Cashing In to discuss markets and policy. He never fully cut ties with show business, taking the occasional TV movie or guest role and joking from time to time about his MASH days, and despite the abruptness of his exit, no real animosity lingered between him and his former castmates. Alda once described him as one of the smartest people he'd ever worked alongside, adding that he missed him after he left. When Wayne died in 2015 at age 82, Alda paid tribute on social media, recalling their friendship and the playful rivalry they'd shared, expressing sorrow that they wouldn't get more time together. Even though Wayne left at the peak of the show's early success without any fanfare, fans still remember Trapper's easy charm and quick wit fondly. Then there's Gary Burghoff, whose departure stemmed not from career ambition, but from emotional exhaustion. As Radar O'Reilly, the wide-eyed company clerk with his stuffed bear and almost supernatural ability to hear incoming choppers before anyone else, Gary brought a tenderness to the show that softened its harsher edges, arguably becoming its emotional anchor, even as Hawkeye and Trapper bent the rules and Henry Blake fumbled through command. Gary was the only actor to reprise his role from the original 1970 film, and he reshaped Radar into something far more vulnerable and innocent than the slightly sleazy character from the movie, making his performance feel essential to the show's identity. But by season 7, the toll of the production schedule, combined with his own perfectionism, began wearing him down, and he privately struggled with anxiety and depression, at a time when such issues rarely made headlines. All while feeling increasingly disconnected from his young family back home. He later admitted that missing his daughter's early years was a regret he never fully shook. Co-star Mike Farrell recalled in a 2018 interview that Gary often felt underappreciated, even though the rest of the cast deeply respected him, and there were ongoing contract negotiations as Gary pushed for better pay, more flexibility, and reduced screen time to manage his home life. Producers tried to accommodate him with extra time off and fewer appearances, but it wasn't enough to keep him from deciding, by season 8, that he needed to leave for good. Unlike Wayne's silent exit, Radar's departure was handled with care, culminating in the two-part farewell Goodbye, Radar, one of the series' most poignant arcs, in which Radar returns from leave to find the camp in disarray, tries instinctively to fix everything as he always had, but ultimately accepts that it's time to go home to help his mother and the family farm. The episode closes almost silently, with Radar walking off into the distance, his teddy bear left behind on Hawkeye's bunk, a moment that captured a sense of lost innocence the show had been building toward all along. After leaving, Gary largely stepped back from the spotlight, briefly appearing in the short-lived spin-off Walter before turning his attention to painting, wildlife conservation, and even inventing. He holds several patents, including one related to fishing tackle, explaining that he left MASH both for his family and to recover from burnout, wanting to reclaim pieces of his personal life. Today, he keeps a low public profile, rarely granting interviews, though fans occasionally catch glimpses of him at conventions, still remembered as the soft-spoken clerk who could hear helicopters before anyone else. Larry Linville's exit followed yet another path entirely. As Major Frank Burns, the rule-obsessed, self-righteous officer carrying on a secret affair with Major Houlihan, Linville created one of television